Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're going to be installing a backup camera on this 2009 Toyota Sienna. Now in this video we're going to show you how to integrate this backup camera to an existing aftermarket radio. Let's get started. Okay, so at the bench, the camera kit that we're using in our install today is the Nitika license plate mountable camera kit. It also comes with a universal mount and a license plate bracket mount. This bracket goes behind the plate, not in front of it. We've already transferred our camera from the universal to the license plate bracket, just using a screwdriver here. The kit also comes with some electrical tape, a panel tool. Now your main harness that actually carries the signal from the camera to your radio or screen or whatever takes an analog input, has some simple connections. It has your main camera power connection, which will connect our camera right in there. And it has a power ground here and a trigger wire here. A simple install, or option A, to just simply connect this. You connect to the power ground of the reverse light in the hatch, which is really easy to do, and we can show you where to do that. And then this end would be your trigger wire, which will go to the reverse trigger of your radio, and this will plug into the camera input, the backup camera input on the back of the radio itself. That would be a very simple, straightforward install. However, sometimes an aftermarket radio has the option to call upon the camera when not in reverse. And that's a nice feature to have in case you're towing something. So instead of powering the camera only on reverse light power and ground, and using this as a trigger, what we can do alternatively is power the camera off of accessory, meaning the camera is going to be on when the radio is on. And the way that we can do that is we'll repurpose this trigger wire, and instead of sending signal from the reverse light power, we're going to go the other direction and send accessory back into the harness. We won't use this end, we'll just cap it off, we'll ground our harness, and what that's going to do is going to allow the camera to be on whenever the radio is functioning. And so when we're ready to call upon the camera, we can easily do so, as the camera will be on. We want to do this with a camera that doesn't have LEDs if we're running it off accessory. If it has LEDs, those LEDs are on when the vehicle's running. That's not very safe. Now the downside of doing that is because now we are repurposing the trigger wire to send power to the camera. Now we're left without a trigger wire, and this generation Sienna does not have any smart harness to provide the backup camera trigger. So we have to find it elsewhere or run another wire along with this one in order for us to accomplish this. Fortunately, we can actually tap into the driver's side kick panel for our reverse trigger. So with that all out of the way and being said, let's head to the car to start tearing apart the rear hatch so we can prepare running our wire and mounting up our camera. Let's go ahead and get started by removing the trim pieces in the rear hatch. This is going to gain us access needed to run the wiring for our backup camera. All these panels are simply held in with clips. You see us using a vinyl panel tool or a trim removal tool. This is just helping us get leverage on those clips so we can pop them free, reducing the risk that we'll actually break those clips. Now here there's the grab handle, or the little cloth handle here. Remove the cover, remove the 10mm bolt holding in that handle, and then the rest of the bezel once again is just held on with clips. You can see me, it takes a few minutes just to get them all unsnapped. Some of them may stay up in the door. It's okay, you can actually go ahead and remove them and add them back into the panel before reinstallation, but take your time, slowly unsnap each one of those little clips here. Get your hand up in there. Eventually it pops on down like it did for us. Next, you're going to have some 10mm nuts holding in the license plate light trim panel. There should be 5 of them there. We removed it with an extension here, and what that's going to do is give us the access needed to run our camera wiring. Using some pliers, we popped that last clip through, pushed it through, and now eventually that allows us to remove this trim piece from the outside of the rear hatch. So it gives us access to that wiring grommet. This is where we're going to run our wiring through the rear hatch, allowing us to run that into the cabin all the way up to back behind the radio. Made a little slit in the factory grommet so we could push our wiring through it there. Don't damage any of the factory wiring. Once you pulled that on through, go ahead and reseat your grommet, and then once that's all seated, route your wire appropriately, and then go ahead and put your panel back on. All right, so we went ahead and got our camera all mounted there on the studs. We just need to put the plate on. Again, remember the bracket goes behind the plate. That went up there. We just followed along the factory wiring. Saw us poke a hole through that grommet. We fed our wire through. Reseated the grommet so it's a nice tight seal. Follow the wire up. We're working our way down here. And here we go. Now, we need to plug in our extension harness. And up here, there's actually a lot of different connections depending on the configuration of your camera. If you want to simply just power your camera off the reverse light and call it a day, you can easily do that. There's actually a power distribution right here where you can just tap into any one of these red with a black or blue stripe right here, these three, and that'll be power for your camera. And ground, any white with a black stripe is going to be a ground. A huge ground distribution block right here, you can tap into any of those grounds. We're going to tap into this wire, but further up the chain, up by the kick panel. So all we're going to do is plug in our camera. We're going to ground our camera probably to one of these black, white with a black stripe. And then we got to run it down here, running along. We got to go through this grommet, which is probably the hardest part of this install, into the car. We're going to work our way down the D-pillar. And then we'll work our way all the way forward, going to our aftermarket radio cavity. All right, so we connected our extension harness right into our camera harness. We actually taped it up just so it doesn't come apart here in the hatch. Then we ran that down, zip tying it all the way down. Now we'll need to pull this apart so we can run our wire through this grommet so it comes into the cabin of the van. On your extension harness is that red and black wire here. We ran that back up here, just cut it short. There is a white with a black stripe, ground literally right here. We went ahead and just stripped it back and soldered onto there. We poke a hole through our wire and we thread our wire through the wire, and then we'll solder on there. They'll throw some heat shrink on this because, again, we're not going to use this end. We're going to power from the other, and we don't want accessory power live just hanging out here. So we're going to go ahead and cap this on off here. And we're just about done here. Once we solder there, we'll tape that up so it's nice and loomed and insulated. Finish zip tying. And next, let's run our wire through the grommet. So what we've done here is we went ahead and taped our wire to our hanger, and we're going to use our hanger to fish it through. Now we're going to lube this up really well with some soap and water, and that's going to allow it to easily pass on through as we fish our new camera wire through the factory boot. All right, so we got everything soldered and taped. That's good to go. This is all back together here. We also fed our wire down, and we're about to this point. Now we just got to tuck underneath paddles and working our way forward here. Okay, so we went ahead and ran our wire through. We just fished it up underneath the dash. Then we found a nice hole that goes up into the stereo cavity there. We'll zip tie, make sure everything's nice and clean for a backup camera. Now, our radio has a orange white for the reverse trigger. Most instances, it's a purple white, but with Alpine, the Alpine that we're using, it's a purple white. We actually ran it down. And in this loom, underneath this kick panel here, there is a large red with a black stripe here. It's kind of deep buried in there. That is a reverse trigger. That's actually powering the reverse lights there. It tees off in the rear hatch to both lights, but this is your main power feed for it. So what we did is we actually soldered onto that. You can use a T-tap or something like that. This just prevents you the need to run the line all the way to the back, since you can tap into it just right here. So we stripped it back, soldered it on there, and we'll wrap that connection there and re-lume this harness. It's actually not too bad to get to. So anywho, just a good little idea for you for your reverse trigger. This is all the way from the radio, and connecting it right there will save a little bit of time and wire. All right, so we're back here in the car, ready to start getting everything installed. Now you notice for our backup camera install, we actually already have the radio out, and we didn't even cover disassembling the radio because we covered that in great detail in the first video where we replaced the factory head unit with an Alpine aftermarket unit. So check that video on out. We'll link it in the description, which walks you through step by step on how to remove the factory radio and install an aftermarket one in its place. So we fished our backup camera wire up into the dash here. Remember, this little pigtail generally is your trigger, but we repurposed this as a power, so we're sending power back into the harness to power the camera in the back. On our radio harness on the bench here, we left a black and a white off so we could power a camera. We just teed into our aftermarket harnesses red and black. We're just using the red though, and we teed into our red. We put a little butt connector on there, so it's good to go. And then this end will plug into our aftermarket radio's reverse camera input. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get the radio back in the dash. Okay, let's do a test. So if we hit camera, we have our backup camera. So at this point of time, let's go ahead and finish reassembling the radio. All right, so we got everything all reassembled here. It's looking great. Got our camera plugs all in, got our camera powered up from the radio harness, and with everything reassembled, let's do a final test. Now, if we go ahead and put it in reverse, it'll automatically cycle over to the reverse image. We'll pull it out of reverse. Perfect. Now, again, because we chose option B to power the camera off of accessory, technically the camera's still on, even though we're not looking at it. So if we manually call upon the camera, there we are. It's awesome. So if we're towing something, like we have a hitch there on the back of the van, we'll be able to actually see whatever we're towing, check our chains or connections without actually having to be in reverse. What we also did, was kind of cool that we didn't show you, is we put a front camera in, which is pretty nice. So they can pull up nice and close and tight to anything that they wish. So there we are. So we will exit out of that. And that's about it for this install. Now, like mentioned before, if you want to see the radio install, we'll link that video down in the description. And if you want any of the parts that we used in today's install, we'll link those in the description as well. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe to post great content on the channel all the time. We will see you in the next video.